Good, good afternoon and welcome. We're delighted to have you join us for today's global conversation. The theme for today's conversation is Africa, and we will have an opportunity to hear about some fascinating work happening in the region, as well as explore some opportunities for engaging there. I would like to take a moment to thank our co-sponsors for today's program: UW-CALS Study Abroad Office, UW's Institute for Regional and International Studies National Resource Center, and UW's African Studies Program, and to thank our speakers for sharing their time with us. My name is Jennifer Kushner, and I'm the Interim Director at CALS Global and your host today. Our office facilitates and supports international engagement for faculty, staff, postdocs, and graduate students, as well as cultivating international partnerships and hosting visitors. I am a social scientist by training with degrees in adult education and agriculture. I've worked worldwide, and my main African-related work has been in Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Kenya, and the diaspora. From a scholarly perspective, I focus on Afrocentric leadership and liberatory movements. To kick us off, we will have the opportunity to learn a bit more about the region and the African Studies program. Following this introduction, we will hear from a variety of speakers who will share their work and experiences with us. These will be followed by an introduction to a study abroad opportunity in the region. I will introduce each speaker prior to their talk. Please feel free to put questions in the chat, and if time allows, hopefully we'll take them at the end. Following the speakers, we'll have an opportunity to hear about a variety of ways to get involved in Africa beyond the study abroad, or including the study abroad. This information and other materials from today's conversation will be emailed to all registered participants. Please note the session is being recorded. To get us started, I'd like to introduce Dr. Aliyah McCord, who will provide a bit of a background to kick this off for us. Aliyah is the Associate Director of the African Studies Program at UW-Madison. She holds a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. Dr. McCord is broadly interested in the intersections between energy, health, and sanitation. She has worked in Ghana, Uganda, and Rwanda on a variety of air quality and renewable energy projects, including efforts with commercial partners and researchers from Makerere University Center for Research in Energy and Energy Conservation to develop and test innovative waste management and renewable energy technologies. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Dr. Aliyah McCord.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, for that kind introduction, and thank you to the organizers for bringing everyone together. I really love that you're hosting this series on these different regions. Sorry. I hope you can hear me. I have a little pop-up here. Okay, because I think the area studies programs at the University of Wisconsin, not just African studies, but the other area studies programs are really underutilized, underappreciated gems on this campus, and something that all of us can be proud of in the state of Wisconsin. We have hundreds of leading faculty, staff, and students across departments, across campus who are interested in the study of other places in the world. And that makes this university one of the best places to receive an international or global education. But of course, all of you already know that because you're here and you're here to talk about Africa. So without further ado, I will talk about Africa. So the organizers have tasked me with the sort of gargantuan and extremely intimidating task of providing a brief overview of the continent. Which I can unfortunately not do, because if I have learned one thing from being the Associate Director of African Studies here at UW over the past few years, it's that I actually know very little about Africa, and it feels like I know less and less every day that I'm in this job. And this is, of course, one of the great paradoxes of intensely studying a subject is the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And of course, this is one of the reasons I love my job, because I essentially am tasked with learning about all the great Africa work that goes on across our campus. And so I get to learn something new and expand my horizons each and every day. But I'm going to do my best to humor the organizers and offer you guys what I see as some of the trends on this campus and other campus emerging about the big picture questions that folks are asking and answering about the continent, including many of the folks you'll hear from today, like who are all members of our community, by the way, here on campus. So Africa, it's a big, diverse place with a really long history. And I think you can just remember that because it's probably the only universal and definitive statement that everyone would accept that you could make about the continent. So Africa, it's a big and diverse place with a long history. It's diverse ecologically, right? The continent is home to the full range of ecosystems that you could possibly imagine. It has the world's largest desert in the north, right? The Sahara. And it has the world's second largest tropical rainforest in the Congo Basin, which is of course home to a wide array of endemic and critically endangered species, including those lovely, very charismatic megafauna like bonobos and chimpanzees and gorillas, which we all kind of think and know the Congo for having those kinds of species. But Africa is also home to penguins. And if you just keep going south a little further, you'll end up in Antarctica. So this is a continent that has the full range of ecological diversity. And this biological diversity is of course related to the geological diversity of the continent. Africa is home to about a third of the world's known mineral wealth. And that includes things like oil reserves and natural gas reserves throughout the continent. But it also includes 40% of the world's known gold reserves and 90% of the world's known chromium and platinum deposits. And I think of special interest to me, and maybe to many of you, is the continent is also home to millions of tons of cobalt, particularly in the Congo Basin. And as any of the engineers in the room already know, cobalt, of course, being a critical mineral that is essential to the development of a clean energy future. And most of the world's cobalt reserves squarely located in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and in the Congo Basin. So layered on top of this, this sort of rich biological diversity and this mineral wealth is an explosion of cultural and linguistic diversity as well. Africa is home to 1.5 billion people. That's about a little less, about 1 in 7 people in the world live on the continent. It's home to 54 countries, and it's a really young continent. So the median age on the continent is just shy of 20. So in comparison, a place like the United States, our median age is approaching 40. The continent has somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 unique languages, and that's about a third of the world's known languages. This makes the continent very unique, of course, because you're not going to find that kind of linguistic diversity anywhere else in the world. It's the highest concentration of linguistic diversity on the planet. And why all of this sort of cultural and linguistic diversity? Well, I think as we all know, Africa is the cradle of humanity. People have been living in this place for a really, really, really long time. Our species evolved on the continent. And so people have lived in Africa longer than any other place on the planet. And they've had plenty of time to develop unique customs and communications along the way. So Africa is a big, diverse place, ecologically, geologically, culturally, politically, linguistically. It's a really big place. It's a really diverse place, and it has a long history. And beyond that simple statement of truth, I think there's a lot less agreement on the past, present, and future of the continent and what we should be thinking about and studying. A lot of the rest of it is very contested, if you will. So if I could take a moment to grossly oversimplify the conversations that I hear a lot in African studies, I would say one of the largest tensions that I hear is between something called Afro-pessimism and Afro-optimism or Afro-positivism. And maybe one other thing that everyone could agree on is that studying Africa is that Africa's home to a lot of isms, that have shaped the continent and its people and its relationship to other places in the world. So by some accounts, Afro-pessimists, if you will say that Africa, Africans, and Africa's place in the world should be understood entirely through the lens of destructive forces like racism and colonialism and enslavement, and that the continent and its people and its resources have been viciously exploited, and that they are victims of colonial power, and that we kind of see the echoes of these histories in the political instability and the poverty and the disease and many of the other social problems that plague the continent. And other people see Africa as an economic powerhouse, right? With a rapid clip of technological progress and political reform and a landscape that is full of these vibrant and diverse cultures and histories. And these kind of Afro-optimists, right, would argue that these negative narratives about the continent are toxic and inaccurate, and they sort of ignore the real wealth and beauty that exists in the place. And so if you were to ask me whether I'm an Afro-pessimist or an Afro-optimist, I would say yes. And then perhaps in the words of my favorite philosopher, Daniel Tiger of PBS Kids, I would say you can be more than one thing. And I think what these kind of big debates about Africa tell me, and what's most important, I think, to all of us to keep in mind, is that how we frame Africa, right, as a place of despair and poverty, or as a place of progress and optimism, a future model for sustainability, et cetera. These words and this framing really matters, and it has an impact. And so we all kind of need to think critically about the work that we do and how we describe the work that we do, because we are part of that narrative, whether we like it or not. And this extends to all disciplines and to all of us who work on the continent, whether we're in the humanities or the social sciences or the natural sciences. Whatever work we do is connected to these larger narratives of the continent. And I think all of us just need to be really aware of that at all times, and thinking as ethical students, as ethical researchers, to be aware of these narratives and to be aware of how and why we're contributing to them in the ways that we do. So I think that's Africa. It's big, it's diverse, it has a long history, and it has a very contested history. So there we go. I'm going to leave it right there. And thankfully, I'm now moving to the second part of my presentation. Thankfully, if any of you are interested in thinking about the complexity that is the continent of Africa, well, you've come to the very right place here at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, because UW-Madison is home to the first, and I am a little biased, but I think the finest, African Studies program in North America. We were founded in 1964. And we've got over 90 faculty members from 40 departments, about the same number of graduate students, studying all aspects of lives, lands, and languages of the continent. And so whatever your particular interest is in the continent, I guarantee that there is someone on this campus who both shares your interests and also would be ready and willing to sort of challenge your perspective of how you should be working on the continent. So that makes working here a really special place. If you're interested in the study of Africa, you're not going to find that kind of depth of expertise and that sort of breadth of disciplinary interest anywhere else, arguably in the world, or in North America, certainly. And if you crave that kind of disruptive knowledge that comes from having your worldview challenged by listening to other people describe a place that you think you know so well, which is my daily experience as the Associate Director of the African Studies program, I would encourage you to come to Africa at Noon, which is a weekly seminar series, interdisciplinary seminar series all about Africa. It happens every Wednesday, as the name suggests, at noon in Ingram Hall, room 206. And actually, Lusayo, who you're going to hear from a little later, will be presenting at Africa at Noon in just, I think, 3 short weeks, right? May 4th, I believe. I'll put a link to his talk in the chat here. So I invite all of you to come to Africa at Noon if you can. In addition, I just wanted to let you know a couple other resources on campus through the African Studies program. Any students in the room, we run a program called FLAS, Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowships. These are fellowships for the study of African languages and cultures and African studies in general. They're funded by the US Department of Education, and you have to take an African language. At UW-Madison, we teach Wolof, Swahili, Yoruba, and Arabic in the classroom, as well as offer the study of any African language through our multi-language seminar. So whatever language you want to learn on the continent, there's a class for you, one, and then there's a scholarship for you, two, to learn that language. So if you're interested in learning an African language, and I think that's the best way to learn about a place is to learn the language, please come and see me. I'd be happy to tell you more about the FLAS program. And for,
Leah,
yeah.
If I might interrupt you for just a quick sec.
Sure.
We have some opportunities at the end, and I'm mindful of, we've got a pretty packed schedule. So if it's all right with you, I know we have this, some of these already listed in our opportunities section. If we could either add those additional ones or circle back at the end. Some of our speakers I know have to hop off early, so I'm
absolutely
okay. Thank you.
I will just end it there then and say that my job here is to connect you to other people on campus. And so if anybody wants to talk more about who's doing what work on campus, come and see me.
Thank you so much. Great introduction, and we'll be sure to add any additional opportunities that aren't there at the end. All right, I'm going to move us along. So our first guest is Mr. Lusayo Mwakatika. Lusayo is a business development officer for Acades Malawi. Acades is a social enterprise empowering youth through agriculture in Malawi. Lusayo has a degree in agribusiness management from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He's also the former president of Project Malawi, a student organization on campus working to fundraise for different causes in Malawi. Lusayo also likes playing soccer and doing stand-up comedy in his free time. And without further ado, I turn it over to Lusayo.
Hi, everyone. I hope you are all able to see my screen. All right, so as I've already been introduced, my name is Joshua Mwakatika, and I'm working with Acades Malawi. So today I just want to share with you about my journey going through UW and some of the things I did as an undergrad that prepared me for this journey. And also just share a little bit about my work and areas where maybe we could collaborate if there are people that would be interested in some sort of collaboration. So thank you all for being here. So yeah, at first I just wanted to talk about my UW journey. So I came to Wisconsin hearing the name probably for the first time when I was trying to apply for the schools, and when I heard about the school. So I was very new to Wisconsin, and I had not even heard about winter when I was applying to Wisconsin. So it was a very big shock for me when I was applying, and also when I arrived in Wisconsin, because everything was very new to me. But throughout my journey at UW, there are some things that I did that I feel like prepared me for the journey and things that I'm doing right now. So I joined the agribusiness club that really helped me to, well, my agribusiness classes really helped me to just learn more about the field and just get some exposure about what is in there in terms of like agriculture as a business per se. And also I was able to do several internships, one of them even with African studies, which exposed me to quite a few. I think I was with them, Mandela Washington Fellowship, which is also another great program where I was able to meet with other Africans as well. But I was also able to do other internships with CARE International and other organizations as well that helped me to prepare me for the kind of career and developmental work that I'm doing now. In terms of the extracurricular activities, so as I think it was mentioned in my introduction, I was the president of Project Malawi for about 2 years. So during this time, we're fundraising for CALS, which is an organization I'm working with now, and we were fundraising for different causes during this time, and it is one of the best extracurricular activities. Not only did it allow me to explore the world of fundraising and connecting with people and making new connections, but at the same time also it helped me to connect a piece of myself, which is Malawi, to campus, because I always try to connect these two communities that I now belong together. So it was a really great opportunity for me to share about my culture, my country, and my people with the people of Wisconsin, but also do the same to Malawians about Wisconsin. So through this, we were able even to establish an internship program. I'm happy Nathaniel's here to allow some of the members of Project Malawi to go to come to Malawi and intern. I'm actually in Malawi right now, so it's kind of nighttime here, but so some of the students will be coming to Malawi this summer for the first time to intern with my organization. So I was really happy and proud that we were able to do that through my time at UW. I was also involved in the senior class office, which was also another rewarding experience. I was a philanthropy director, and during my time, we focused on a gift for the senior class, and we focus on the social justice because we felt like that was the cause that our class wanted to focus on. So that's the class of 2021. And I was also in the agribusiness club where I met quite a few people in my major, and I was able to just make some connections with friends that I still keep in touch up to date. My current position is, as I said, the business development officer, but I'm really working mostly in Lilongwe, Malawi, which is the capital city. So I work with CALS microfinance. So CALS is divided in several divisions. I'm going to go deeper into that just after this, but so that's my current position, and that's where I'm located. So CALS is located in 3 districts in Malawi. That's in Chinji, Lilongwe, and Kasungu. And it is only on the central region of Malawi. So in terms of my work, CALS Malawi is an organization that saw the need to increase youth employment first in Malawi, but also to capitalize on agriculture, which is the largest economic sector in Malawi. So about 40% of our economy relies on agriculture, and about 60% of our imports come from agriculture. So as you see, Malawi's agriculture is very dependent. Malawi's economy is very dependent on agriculture. And at the same time, also, there's very little sustainability because I think a study in 2017 found that an average farmer in Malawi is about 65 years old. And by that time, the life expectancy in Malawi was about 64 years old. So I find that, an average farmer in Malawi was supposed to almost be dead 1 year ago, which raises questions on sustainability of the sector. So as CALS Malawi, we're trying to get more young people into agriculture to make it, to increase innovation and creativity, but at the same time also to make it sustainable going forward. So CALS Malawi, what we do most is we take a comprehensive approach on farming. So we help the farmers in terms of the, at first we help them plan for having a business plan to plan for their farming enterprise. And then we also help them by giving them an input loan so that they can get inputs for their production. We also train them in production and also financial literacy so that they take farming as a business. And at the same time, also we help in providing markets after they have produced. So we take a holistic approach, taking the farmer from the beginning up to the end, because we saw that there are so many barriers for the youth to get into agriculture. One of them being that they don't have access to funding, and they also don't have access to knowledge and expertise. So we deliver this. And the other major constraint is that they don't have access to markets. So for me, the most important part about CALS and what we do is that we tailor-made our products to the farmers that are working with, especially the microfinance that I'm part of. So for the microfinance, we wanted to make sustainable each part of our program. So the financing part is a very important aspect of our programming. So providing loans to youth farmers, because as a youth in Malawi, it's very hard for you to get a loan at the bank, because first you have two barriers as risks. You pose a major risk being a youth and you don't have a good credit record, but also collateral is kind of limited. But at the same time, also you're venturing in a very risky sector, which is agriculture. So banks usually don't take bets on young people venturing into agriculture. So we found that this is a need that was very in high demand for most young people. So that's why we decided to commercialize it and at least make it sustainable on the long run. So we registered the financing component of our kids as a microfinance, and this we are making tailor-made products for our farmers in a way whereby we found that most microfinances keep farmers in debt, put most people in debt when we were researching, because of the repayment schedules and that maybe don't fit the farming season, and also the lifestyle of the rural people. So we're making our products in a way whereby we are involving our farmers in the way we design our products. So the first part is we provide loans in form of seeds. Because we know sometimes that when we provide cash, in the rural areas, farmers might have other uses for cash. So, but when you provide seed, it's there and they're able to pay back in a favorable way. But also in terms of our payments, we tailor-made them that they should be able to pay after they harvest. So we have options whereby farmers can make bullet payments after 4 months, which is after they've grown their produce. So soybean and other kind of produce takes about 4 months. So we allow them to take a loan and then they pay only after they have harvested, so that they are not indebted by having maybe monthly payments or weekly payments. And we also involve our farmers as much as possible, and we want to grow with our farmers. So right now we're introducing products such as the irrigation products, because we see that our farmers are making profits and they're growing, and they want to start now doing irrigation, and they'll need other big equipment going forward. So that is how what we're doing to make sure that our products are tailor-made for our farmers. So that's just a little bit of me. I was able to meet the Malawian vice president, which is a very proud moment recently because of our work, and he came to come and supervise our work. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then, so areas of collaboration, I just wanted to put this in case there are folks that might be interested in getting in touch with us. So for me, I'm kind of very intentional in terms of like the areas of collaboration that maybe we could have. So in terms of research, we find that, because we've been working in the youth sector for quite a long time, youth and agriculture, a lot of programs have been coming to us to be hubs we've almost become an informal hub of data. So because of that, we've been actually informing some of the strategic planning for most of the donor institutions in Malawi, developmental institutions in Malawi. So even the Irish aid, I think the UK aid even were coming to us to kind of reach out for information about the youth and agriculture. So we are trying to do as much research as possible into agriculture. So if there are any people that would be interested in Malawi and researching about youth in agriculture and topics that might be interesting to them and to us, that will inform our work going forward and make us have maybe publish papers to even back up some of our work, but also to just inform us more about our work. That would be a great area of collaboration. We're also looking at different markets. So our farmers only produce organic products. So we're looking for like organic markets, if people would be having those kind of like opportunities available, or be willing to talk about that, because we want our farmers to have the maximum profits as much as possible. So exports market would be very, very important for us. And then we're also looking for if people can have, if some have connection to like impact investors or funders that would help us to fund and further our work, would also be interested in that. But if other people have other areas of collaboration, they're also welcome. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much. Really inspiring. And I remember speaking with you, like I said, a while ago, and was inspired then and continue to be. Moving on, our next guests are Jacob Breit and Derek Krismer. Jacob is a third-year undergraduate student in CALS studying global health, nutritional science, and organic agriculture with specific interest in public health. He is currently an undergraduate researcher in the Lyonnais Laboratory in the Department of Nutritional Sciences, studying pediatric diseases. Jacob is the current personal development chair for the Dietetics and Nutritional Science Club and the project director for the Wisconsin Students for Climate Action Coalition documentary film Earth Day. He will be transitioning next year into the role as president of Global Health Innovation Club. He hopes to continue on in his education this summer at the Kenya CDC Medical Research Institute. Derek is an undergraduate student graduating this May with a degree in biochemistry and a certificate in global health. For the past 3 years, he has worked in the Hamadi lab in the UW Carbone Cancer Center. He will be applying to medical school this spring and plans on spending a gap year to work in a clinical setting. He loves to travel, read, watch Badger sports, and most importantly, spend time with his family and friends. Take it away, you two.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, I would like to say that first off, all of the resources that people have to offer on campus are absolutely phenomenal, because like coming from like literally 2 years ago, not knowing anything about Africa to now literally, I feel like there's such a central hub at like on UW campus of the community of people with just so many resources. Like I didn't know anything about Africa, and now like I feel comfortable like speaking my mind about it and actually being able to like maybe go to Africa this summer, which is super cool, which is also a really good transition because Derek and I actually attended, we did like the mobile medical clinic study abroad, but we still had to do it online due to COVID restrictions, all that kind of stuff. But that being said, it is a really, really awesome experience. And I know that Derek and I really enjoyed the entire experience at hand. So Derek and I are just going to explain a little bit about what the program was like and what kind of aspects we learned. So we actually focused on the Mukono district of Uganda, which was very interesting. Throughout the 15-day program, we were able to discuss various topics such as community visits, COVID-19 in Uganda, HIV, different types of childcare, and we also were able to do virtual tours of the Kampala city and a bunch of the pediatric nutrition clinics and herbal medicine. So it was really interesting, honestly. What I thought was most interesting was that we use Uganda's healthcare systems as kind of like a mainstay and like how we can build and re-idealize what it is to be healthcare systems in the United States. There's a lot more focus on like interpersonal care and almost like the nursing side of aspect where you're like really working with people one-on-one to try to give them the best possible care, rather than the hierarchical experience that I've witnessed working in the hospital setting in the United States. For me personally, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really interesting perspective, and it made me really happy just how interested everyone that we were talking to, how passionate they were and how proud they are of the work that they're doing. And it just seems like it's not about like a job that they're doing. It's more of like that they are like, this is what I'm destined to do, and I'm destined to be a healthcare worker, or I'm destined to help to be a teacher. And it felt like they had so much passion, and it made me just like, you get that little like fuzzy stomach, fuzzy feeling in your stomach. It just made me feel good. Like I'm like, these people care, and I'm like, that's really awesome. So that's basically all I have to say. I would like to thank everyone for coming here today, because I highly recommend doing programs abroad. I highly recommend getting involved in this team and this hub of people, because they're filled with knowledge and good things to say.
I can take over from there, and I agree with Jacob that obviously in an ideal world we would have been able to go and experience it firsthand, but obviously the online experience was still incredible, and I still enjoyed meeting everyone that we got to interact with. And I think that was something that I thought was going to be a little bit of a challenge because of the online setting, was really forming those relationships with the members of the Mukono community and just kind of really getting to know them. And I think we did a really good job of that through the Zoom meetings, and they showed us around the community and around the different healthcare settings. And I think that did a really good job of showing us what it's like. Although we couldn't be there in person, it was the next best thing that we could do. And kind of piggybacking off of what Jacob said with experiencing what their healthcare was like and how it's different than here in the United States, and trying to take that and incorporate that into hopefully my future applying to medical school here. I really learned a lot of lessons of how you do need that passion and the drive to help people, and to not just view it as a job or what you think you're supposed to do, that it is. If you don't have that passion or that drive to help people, it's not something you should really go into. And it really helped confirm for me that this is what I want to do, and kind of like how I want to take forward the things I learned and the relationships I made, and take that into my future, hopefully in a medical profession. And so I guess, yeah, I agree with Jacob that it was really an incredible experience that I wasn't expecting to get out as much as I did because of the online setting. And I'm really, really glad that I still went through with it, because I was hesitant. I was like, is it going to be worth it being online? And it absolutely was. And it was really an incredible experience. And I hope that anyone that's interested in it, whether you end up going abroad or if there's still online programs, take that opportunity, go for it. It might be scary, it might be something you don't think is worth it, but it absolutely is. And it was a wonderful experience that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. So thanks for listening. And I hope I gave you a good little insight on what it was like.
Thank you both so much for sharing your experience. I'd like to propose a slight switch in the order here, and invite Dr. James Natambi to go next, just to accommodate some schedules. We'll switch Dr. Natambi and Josh Garoon. So for those that are interested and want to get involved and want to be able to hear more about these kinds of opportunities, Dr. James Natambi is going to introduce us to a study abroad opportunity in Uganda. James is a professor of biochemistry and the Steenbach Professor of Nutritional Sciences at UW. His research interest lies in the genetic regulation of metabolism in health and disease. He's also interested in conducting research on obesity and diabetes and other non-communicable metabolic diseases in developing countries. Dr. Natambi is involved in the African National Sciences Research Consortium that brings together academic and research institutions across the East and Central African region with the goal of building a PhD training program in basic laboratory research in biochemistry and nutritional sciences. Dr. Natambi, I'll turn it over to you and let you take it away.
Very much, Julia, for that introduction. I'm not really going to spend too much time. I just want to let you know that some of what I was going to say has just been said by Jacob and Derek because they were involved in that virtual program on the mobile clinics and the healthcare in Mukono, Uganda. It was a summer program, and we are going to do that program again. But I just wanted to start off by saying that we started these programs in Uganda. I started them in the 1990s. And then when I was teaching here biochemistry, I was teaching more like nutritional biochemistry. I used to get a lot of questions from the students I was teaching. I was teaching 501 biochemistry and 510. And they were asking me about some of the disease conditions I was talking about that are connected to nutrition. Things like kwashiorkor, marasmus. And I just looked like they really wanted to see the real cases because these are, metabolic these diseases, and they wanted to see the real cases. So I said, wow, how do I do this? I then went up to CALS, and that's where I met John Ferrick. and Ken Shapiro. At that time, they were leading the global, they were international programs in CALS. And we sat together and we started figuring out how we could set up a program so that the students could have, hands-on experiences outside the classroom. And we looked around places in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa. And of course, they knew that I come from Africa, and specifically, I come from Uganda. So we decided to say, okay, why don't we set up this international study abroad program in agriculture, nutrition, and health. So we started this program in 2002. So we have been running this program with Johnny Ferrick for almost 20 years now. And we have taken so many students, undergrads, graduate students, faculty, even staff have been involved in this. And the idea was to see the connection, between agriculture, nutrition, and health in a developing country, where there is a lot of malnutrition, deficiencies, vitamin D deficiencies, and we wanted also to learn about the culture, to learn about agriculture, education, and women issues, the environment, water systems. And we sort of started a program, so it is a real course, Nutritional Sciences 375, which is conducted during the fall, where students sort of given information about agriculture, agriculture education, culture, history, and nutrition in Uganda. And that then is followed by a field course during the winter. So it is a three-week course, field course, and we get in there. And the idea of the pre-departure information was to sort of alert them what they would expect when they get into the country. So we visit clinics, nutritional clinics, visit agricultural research centers, schools, we get in communities, and we visit, we also go to the parks. So we look at, and we are actually involved in hands-on. The students themselves get involved in these activities, in the agricultural activities, and so on. So it is one of those programs that has actually brought to Africa or to Uganda many students. And if I count now, maybe more than 500 students have gone over the years. So that was the agriculture, nutrition, and health course. And then the second course that was started in 2010 is the mobile clinics and healthcare course in Uganda that Jacob and Derek talked about. So I'm not going to say much about that. They have really told you we didn't have the opportunity to go. And this summer we are going. So if there are people who are interested, I think Kim has already put up the names of the people who are going to. I don't know whether Jacob or you are going. Are you? I don't know whether Jacob is going, but we are going in August to do essentially what Jacob and Derek talked about. So I just wanted to say that these programs have been very eye-opening to the students, faculty members who have been involved, and almost even myself, although I come from every time I go, I learn new things. So it is a good experience to have these, to be involved in these international programs. And I'll just stop there. I think Johnny Ferrick can actually amplify or add a little bit more on that course that we started together 20 years ago.
Thank you so much. And John, if you don't mind, I'll have you hold any additional pieces just so that we might finish out with our scheduled speakers, and then hopefully we'll have time for a little discussion at the end, and you can embellish upon the history of the program, which would be fantastic. So our next guest is Dr. Josh Garoon. Josh is an assistant professor and ethnographer in the Department of Community and Environmental Sociology. He studies the ways in which health, development, and the environment intersect across Africa and the United States, and how those intersections manifest in health inequalities at the local level. He's particularly interested in how health inequalities are shaped by global, national, and local stakeholders' attempts to define and act on community and neighborhood resources. In short, he investigates environmental governance. His work cuts across anthropology, sociology, and epidemiology, and his projects in both Africa and the US employ a community-engaged research framework. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Josh.
Thank you. Everybody see this all right? Excellent. So it's really a privilege to be able to go after all these amazing descriptions of what people are doing across the continent, especially in Uganda. To pick up a theme from Aaliyah, I think this is probably going to fall slightly more on the Afro-pessimist side with some pretty pictures, although I hope to end it on more of an Afro-optimist note. And Daniel Tiger is also one of my favorite philosophers. I know we're getting late in the session, so I'm also going to move fairly quickly, but I can stick around for a little bit to answer questions if I've moved too quickly. So there we go. The research I'm going to talk to you about is ethnography set outside of North Luangwa National Park. This is a map of the entire park system, so if you don't see North Luangwa right off the bat, don't worry, you'll see it soon. But it's in the eastern part of the country, right above South Luangwa National Park. The Luangwa Valley is one of the most wildlife-rich areas in the country and in the world, really. And this is the front gate of North Luangwa National Park in my field site. So this is about 12 kilometers, about a 30-minute bike ride from where I lived for a year during my dissertation field work, and I've returned several times over the last decade. So this is work that spans the last decade. I'm going to start with the geographic reference, and I'll plunge you into the work quickly. This is what it looks like. This is actually a lie. This is South Luangwa. I didn't actually get to go into North Luangwa because North Luangwa is such a high-end safari destination. You basically have to fly into the park. And an ethnographer, grad student on the Fulbright, and even, as it turns out, an assistant professor on research funds doesn't have the wherewithal to spend up to $1,000 a day to go through North Luangwa National Park. South Luangwa is much cheaper, but the wildlife is actually fairly similar, with one exception that I'll get to later. So this is just this is the pretty pictures, charismatic megafauna that Aaliyah referred to earlier, and I can't give a presentation without at least showing some of these. All the photos, by the way, are mine unless there's a photo credit. So these are all mine. So there's a bounty of wildlife, as you can see, but the Luangwa Valley was at the epicenter of a poaching crisis, particularly during the 1980s and the 1990s. It continues to today, although, as you'll see, North Luangwa is something of a success story. But before we get to that, we have to understand what the success is in relation to, and as you can see from the couple of bullet points, black rhino were poached out of the park completely by 1998, and around the same time, the elephant population was declining at the rate of over 1,000 elephants a year. Estimates vary on how many were left, but it was from the several hundreds to the few thousands at the time of its nadir. And the immediate response to this was what geographer and anthropologist and conservation expert Dan Brockington called, way back 20 years ago, fortress conservation. And fortress conservation, according to Dan, and you see this in action in these photos are sort of illustrations of it with the Zambian Wildlife Authority photo on at least my left, and the tagged wild dog on the right with a radio a monitor so that they can track wildlife to see what's going on in terms of movement, but also in terms of poaching. Fortress conservation was this idea of massive surveillance and of really trying to lock down national parks and keep people out of those parks. So separating parks and people as much as possible. A lot of the poaching that was going on is massive global commercial networks, but even local people who lived on the edge of these parks were effectively locked out of the parks. And Dan wrote very convincingly that while fortress conservation is often billed as a failure by people who don't like the model, in its own way it was a success, and that it interrupted the poaching that we saw. But it had limited effects, and it really in the 1990s sparked a lot of controversy as to whether this was really the future that people wanted, whether local people living on the edges of parks like North Luangwa or global conservation experts. And that's really where my research comes in. My research came in a place called the Makungale Game Management Area, which is outside of North Luangwa National Park. In the game management area, there is licensed hunting that you can do if you have the money. Locals pay a reduced rate, but there's not a lot of local hunting. It's mainly American and British tourists who come over, pay thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to shoot different animals that are allotted by the Zambian government in consultation with its conservation partners. This doesn't take place in the park. No hunting at all is allowed within the park legally. Poaching obviously continues to go on. But this is where I was. This is the rural, very rural area of Zambia where I did my research. And what brought me here was this success story of community-based natural resource management, of switching from a fortress conservation model into a model in which community members were ostensibly given a lot more control over what, as you heard Jennifer say, environmental governance, over the ways in which the park was governed, over the way in which hunting was governed at the GMA, and over the way in which revenue from that hunting and from international NGOs were used. So Hammer's holding the Goldman Environmental Prize there, which he was awarded in 2007. This is sometimes referred to as the Green Nobel. And as you can see, this was a reflection of the fact that Hammer, along with American partners, is credited for stopping the poaching. Elephant poaching fell to zero in some years, quite low in other years. And the Frankfurt Zoological Society actually reintroduced the black rhino via airlift. They put rhinos from South Africa onto Hercules C-130 cargo planes and are now breeding them actively in North Luangwa. So that's the big success story on the non-human animal side. The human side is this idea of convivial conservation, that humans and animals can live by each other happily, in harmony, and most importantly, healthily. Health has become very linked to the success of the animal populations, human health and non-human health being linked together. And of course, in the era of COVID, this makes even more sense to people who don't usually think about this stuff, right? Because we think about zoonotic diseases. This is even more global. The planetary health model, which we actually sort of teach a class on now, Susan Paskowitz, John Patz, and I, as part of the new global health major, has become very influential. And that's where my work really comes in. So the planetary is seen here, right? These are shops in the Makungale area. Again, these are photos I took. And this area that you just saw, you know, that there's the one idea of the lions and the giraffes and the buffalo and the elephants. And this is the reality on the ground, which is that in these shops, you can see stuff that's definitely not made in Zambia, right? And this is all stuff that's come in and actually been supported by the park infrastructure, because the park has provided transportation, because the Zambian Wildlife Authority officers are coming in and out, the conservation folks are coming in and out. And so there's been an incredible influx of goods, and people are actually thrilled with this, right? As you can imagine, there are stores, new stores being built all the time, as you can see here. This was during one of my latter visits, literally building stores because there is more cash, there's more money. And this is good for health. On the other hand, there's a question of what sort of goodness for health this is. And this is probably my favorite Bemba proverb out there, and very apropos, which is that all the attention of the animals in the park has really focused not just on the global goods that I'm showing you here, but also on global diseases. And so what we have at the Rural Health Center, which I'm showing you here, is a lot of focus now on HIV, on malaria, on tuberculosis, on all the stuff that the Gates Foundation loves to concentrate on, right? And the park, because it's sponsored by the Frankfurt Zoological Society and has American sponsors, is also thrilled to be providing mobile health clinics and antiretroviral therapy and mosquito nets. And this is great. I don't want anybody to get me wrong. This is great. But this is still the reality of water and sanitation in Makungale as of today. It's actually got electricity in the center of the area, and people are still getting water from, and it's an improved spring box, right, that you can see at the bottom there. So don't get me wrong, there's some work done here. But this is how young people are getting their water. This is how families are getting their water. And so the question I'm raising in my research, which is part of a larger book project, is what sort of health issues get elided? What sort of health issues stop getting attention paid to them because of the success story of the park? Because now that the park and community is considered to be a success, HIV and malaria and TB are sexy, just like lions and buffalo and giraffes are sexy. What's not sexy is these everyday health issues. And that's really one of the major thrusts of my book, is asking what conviviality means when it stresses local technology, brings in global health goods, but doesn't seem to have made much of an impact on the ground in terms of things as basic as sanitation and hygiene and water. And the question here is whether this emphasis, on keeping people engaged in the park is actually also keeping them from leaving now, because there's opportunity there for cash, but it's still very limited in terms of infrastructure and transportation out. And so one of the questions this book is asking is, are we actually seeing a return to fortress conservation, but now instead of keeping people out, there's an emphasis on keeping local people in and participating in this community-based network. And again, the question there is what the ramification is for their health. I'm actually quite optimistic about it because people have a lot more agency in this model, but I think there's still a push against the fortress, and the ramifications for health are quite fascinating, at least to me. So I gave you a broad level overview. I think there are bigger ramifications also for how we think about models of planetary health and One Health that I don't have time to get into, but I do think I kept it to about 10 minutes, and I hope that was enjoyable. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Josh. And thank you everybody for your fantastic sharing of your work and experiences. I was going to move us to some PowerPoint slides where I'm not going to do. I was going to talk us through some opportunities for other ways to get involved. There are a whole range of opportunities. And I think what we'll do is, like I said, make sure that all of this information is shared back out with all of the participants. It's got contact information for the presenters. And maybe we'll just take the last few minutes here just for some conversation. John Farrick, if you're still there, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you'd like to add related to the Uganda program, please do. Or if somebody's got a question, they can feel free to put it in the chat for one of our guests.
No, thanks a lot. I just wanted to say, I think a lot of what Josh was talking about is something that's really gone on across the, at least in Uganda that I was more familiar with, and in Ethiopia also. It's very similar, I think, in terms of that, kind of disconnect in some ways between what's happening with all this money coming in to conserve where the wild animals are and getting community involved, but also then really, what's missing in terms of basic healthcare issues that do get missed because they aren't sexy, because they aren't the AIDS or malaria and those things. So Josh, I think what you were talking about is exactly what I've seen happening in other places. And I think your research is just critical in terms of trying to understand how some of those other types of issues might be addressed, because those are the ones that are the people are dealing with every single day, all the time.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, if I could give a quick, more academic spin on this that I didn't put in here because I was trying to broaden for audience. But in academic circles, there's now a big emphasis in the era of the Anthropocene on how anthropocentric we've been, and that we're maybe living in a post-human era. And this post-humanist moment has sort of gotten a lot of play among social studies folks and humanities folks. And I think there's an irony there, right? That just as we sort of started paying attention to humanity, really, that in these wildlife, that there's now this attention to planetary health and the human and non-human interactions, and we've sort of slipped away from some very basic parts of sort of human sustainability in the name of sort of going into this post-human, we have to decenter humans. And so zoonotic diseases get a lot more play because of that, right? And entanglement gets a lot of play. But the stuff that tends to fall out of that in those conversations is the stuff that creates human movement, human mobility, desires to leave, to go to other places, and then to come back. And all of that is sort of a lot of what I'm arguing about in the book. So I don't want to belabor it, but I do want to give that context as well, because I think it's really the moment we're in academically, and it's one I find honestly a little troubling.
Thank you, Josh. Before we part ways, I want to thank everybody for participating and let you know this actually concludes the global conversations for this academic year. So please do watch for next year's program. Sometime probably later summer will come out. We will send out the opportunities, the contact information for students that are here with us today. On the opportunities slides that you'll receive, the ones in green might be of particular interest to you. Certainly they all might be, but the ones in green are more student focused. So thank you all. Wish you all the best and look forward to seeing everybody when we pick up again next year. Take care.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you.